Welcome to the 33rd class on Haiti, the most important country in the world. I dipped back and released my class on Haiti and the Dominican Republic. I've got a lot of interesting responses to that. I suggest you go check them out. It's a lot of interesting debates. I sort of regret uploading that video because of the level of animosity that was unleashed. But I did my best to report the information with the most clarity that I could based on the sources that I had. Speaking of complex things that are hard to really describe and nail down, let's talk about Haiti after Duvalier, after Baby Doc, the time. There's been a lot of things that have happened in that space, and I've spent the last couple of weeks trying to teach that to my students. And I haven't really been doing it the same way that I'm doing it here on YouTube. So I'm going to be talking today about Aristide and his presidencies in Haiti and what he represents. And what I've done in my class is I've tried to mix it together with other stories so that it's maybe easier to follow. But the truth is, Aristide is still alive. He was around and president of Haiti in my adulthood. But it's really hard to really nail down exactly who he was and what he did well and what he did poorly. So I'm going to do my best to present that to you. I'm going to try to present both sides as I've seen them, but I'm not going to provide any kind of conclusions. I'm just going to state the facts as I understand them. And again, I am not an expert on Haitian history or Haitian modern life or anything. I'm just a professor who's doing his best to teach his students something that I think is very important. So if you are an expert and you have more you want to say, hit me up in the comments. Let's discuss this more. But let's get to the curious case of Aristide. Okay? All right, let's get to my PowerPoint. Continue to share. Okay. Students and friends, I am Professor Sky. My name is perhaps known to you. I've undertaken to teach about Haiti. I want curiosity and a thirst for complex understanding to reign in this class. I'm working to help that happen. Unite yourselves, students, with me for the same cause. So, today's class, I don't know, I had a class called Post-Doc. It's kind of a joke, Papa Doc, Baby Doc, Post-Doc. What happened after 86, after Baby Doc was exiled from office. I also had my students watch something which I am going to suggest you watch as an anthropological object, okay? I'm going to suggest you watch a documentary made in England in the 1960s as a way of understanding the inherent racism and exoticism of British journalism, of so-called Western journalism. This documentary I'm going to be talking to you about is fascinating because it took us behind the scenes at during Papa Doc's reign. It's called Wicker's World. It is obscenely colonial in its outlook, but it provides a lot of very interesting views. He talks about the unpredictability of Duvalier in an interesting way, where he has a positive telephone call with somebody, and that causes him to free that person's father from jail. It includes the great interviews with Duvalier where he talks about the way that what other people call democracy, some people call dictatorship. This is going to be a big theme. This has been a big theme throughout the entire class. What is democracy? In a country as manipulated and treated poorly and exploited as Haiti, how does democracy function when democracy is so consistently denied and interfered with both internally and externally? That is one of the questions that Duvalier asked, and I think it's a valid question. In the documentary, they bring up zombies for absolutely no reason other than just to be exotic and to point out otherness. They do show what was then called Cité Simon and is now called Cité Soleil. So this is the most impoverished part of Haiti, and it's a perfect example. It's a thing that's used quite often to illustrate the ways in which the constant urbanization of Haiti, which often is from external forces, which we will talk about. External, especially American forces, have been subtly and not subtly pushing the population of Haiti into cities over the past few decades. Cité Soleil is an example of one of the most crowded, the poorest, and most violent. But as we will see, it is also the source of one of the great leaders. It is impossible to exaggerate the poverty of these people. That's just the way this guy talks. Voodoo, cockfighting, and rum. This is how he describes the pleasure, the joy of the people. Again, it's a terribly... but there's a little image of Baby Doc right in there. They have a whole scene of tourism, which I think is quite interesting. It shows the way that cruise ships would pull into Haiti, and dancers would literally set their butts on fire, would literally hold their genitals over fire for the entertainment of tourists. This woman makes this face, which is quite memorable. There's a certain black comedy in this murderous merry-go-round. That's the entire tone. But what's great about this terrible documentary, I'll include a link to it in the description, is that it does have one-on-one conversations with Duvalier, someone who is famously private. It does actually provide some kind of view, even if it's skewed by a colonial, by the dictatorial control of Duvalier himself and the colonial outlook of Wicker. Still, it is worth seeing. But anyways, what was before? Before Duvalier, we had all these presidents, too many presidents in too little time. Okay, we just have all these people leading up to the Duvalier reign. Interestingly enough, there have been 47 presidents of the United States of America. There have been 47 presidents of Haiti. So that gives you a sense of how long the Duvalier dynasties ran. Right? There's two different leaders, two very different styles of leadership. I'll be talking about that more soon. But that really went for a super long time. And then afterwards, we had this. We had this happening, where we had National Council of Government, and then we had presidents who would last for a year, and then a military coup, and then a different military coup, and then a provisional president, and then we had Aristide, and then another provisional president, then an acting president. What's going on here? What's still happening? Why are we still having all these too many presidents? Why is Aristide there in 91, 94, 96, and then leaving in 2004? Why is Aristide all over the place? Who is this guy? Why is he so important? Why is he so intertwined with American interests? We are going to be talking about the case of Jean-Bertrand Aristide. The ways in which he is a hero and the ways in which he is a villain. Heroically lifting up the minimum wage hike, saying that we need to go from abject misery to dignified poverty, but also perhaps he was someone who incited violence and had dictatorial tendencies. These are all debated questions amongst many people. I'm going to be providing you with the information that I have found, with the express clarifying remarks that the history is not finished being written. Okay? All right. And at the same time, we're going to be talking about America a fair amount. How have our actions, especially in terms of Aristide, been heroic and villainous? So first of all, he was a Catholic priest. That's a very important element. He was a part of a movement called the Églises, the little churches that were rising up during and after the Duvalier, Baby Doc's reign, who represented a grassroots, agriculturally led movement of the people. He believed in a liberation theology. As I tell my students, as I will tell anybody, the Bible is an amazing book. You can read the Bible and say that it gives justification for why slavery needs to exist, or you can read it as justification for why all people need to be free. That's a very simplified way of talking about liberation theology, but that was the kind of thing that he preached. He was against military and foreign exploitation and the business elite. At this point, it's my hope that you would understand, hey, how come he ended up getting kicked out of office or taken out of office so many times? He was against the most powerful forces inside of his country, the military and the business elite. And he was against the most powerful force outside the country. No, not the U.S. Army, not the Soviet Army, no army, but foreign exploitation, foreign businesses. This made him the most dangerous possible president for the rest of the world because he represented so-called Western interests. And he was the first freely elected president of Haiti back in 1990. Sorry to drink water on camera, but I am teaching a lot. I gave a lesson today. I basically screamed my way through it. A lot of what I'm going to be doing comes from this documentary that came out called Aristide and the Endless Revolution. It's made by PBS. I will include a link to it in the description. And we will actually be watching some of it here together. Okay? I'm planning on sharing some of that with you. So he started off his party called La Valasse, the People's Flood. That was the way that he perceived himself, as like the flood of the people. Elected in 1990, and importantly, he spoke Creole. He speaks French, but he also spoke Creole, speaking directly to the people. And he's from Cité Soleil. You see? There he is, over Cité Soleil. I'm going to show you a little excerpt now from this documentary that will show you the ways in which he presented himself and why he might be perceived of as dangerous to American interests.
Jean-Claude Duvalier's departure left both a political and security vacuum in Haiti. And for the next 3 years, former Tonton Macoute and army loyalists battled over control of the country, killing countless civilians. In 1990, the international community finally decided it had seen enough unrest, and a UN mission was dispatched to Haiti to oversee a presidential election. Father Aristide, refusing to be intimidated by multiple assassination attempts and the burning of his church and orphanage, decided to run for the presidency. Aristide called his party La Valasse, or the People's Flood. And his grassroots campaign and fiery populist rhetoric instantly connected with the people tired of oppression and suffering.
President Aristide came out of Cité Soleil. He was a priest who spoke Creole and talked with the people and communicated. Prior to that time, people in power spoke French. And up comes this priest talking to poor people, and yes, he created for them hope. He communicated with them, and he led the way to change.
Today, President Aristide lives in exile in South Africa.
Okay, we'll get to that later. So, we're starting to see how he is... I'm going to get copyright struck for that song. I know it. So we're starting to see the ways in which he is perceived, what his rise was, and why he was legitimately dangerous to the people in power. As he said, we don't want pity, we want justice. As he's described in the documentary, he was the voice of the voiceless. Now, he's not the first president. Dear God, do we know, almost every president who's arrived in the history of Haiti says that he is speaking on behalf of the people. But I think it is safe to say he did as good of a job as anyone in the history of the Haitian state of actually fulfilling his promise to try to help the people, at least as far as I have seen. But you know the story's not going to end there. You know that. You know the story's not going to end there because there is a military coup, which you see happens. He's elected. He comes into office February 1991. By September 1991, he is out of office, taken over by the military. A military coup. This is where America is once again a hero and a villain. Did we do anything? No. Did we go in and stop them? No. Were we interested? It didn't really appear so. Okay? But still, in 1994, we did have Operation Uphold Democracy, where America went in, American Marines went in to reinstate Aristide. So let's just take a second and say, Clinton got into office and he said, hey, he was elected, so we need to put him back in office. Oops, sorry. We appear to be actually doing something altruistic. That's how it appears. And that is one way to read this. It is not the only way to read this. Operation Uphold Democracy makes America look like a hero, but there's another side to it. I don't always know what side to believe whenever I'm looking into things, whenever I'm trying to figure out recent events. In most events, MIT professor Noam Chomsky weighs in. And on balance, he has been correct most of the time. I actually disagree. I disagreed with one of his takes on French grammar a long time ago. We disagree on the works of Vaugelas, but that's okay. We're not talking about universal grammar. We're talking about geopolitical realities. So Chomsky talks about this event in quite more depth in a way that shows perhaps we are not as heroic as we would like to think. Continuing with what isn't reported, the president was indeed allowed to return, but on a condition, namely the condition that he accept the program of the defeated U.S. candidate in the 1990 election, that's Bazin, who had gotten 14% of the vote. That is a very harsh neoliberal program which opens Haiti up to complete takeover by foreign, meaning U.S., mainly corporations, no constraints. It was bound to be an economic disaster for what shreds of the economy remained. It's a familiar program. So after being taken out, he disbands the army. And this is where things get even more complicated because depending on what you know, I'm going to be talking about the gang wars in Haiti coming up soon. That's going to be the second to last class. He did form his own armed gangs called Les Chimères, which were essentially young, unemployed men given weapons to fight on behalf of Aristide. Now, is this primarily defensive, primarily offensive? I don't know, but this is part of the complexity, the heroicness, and the villainous of it. But okay, so he's put back into presidency. He becomes president, and then his term is basically over because he had been elected and kicked out. But that doesn't matter. Someone else comes in and runs for president, René Préval. He wins, and Aristide gives up power. He runs again in 2000, and then what happens? He's put on a helicopter and exiled, exiled to South Africa, as you just saw in that documentary. So this is where things get complicated. This is where America is either heroic or villainous, depending on who you believe. Why did this happen? Who is responsible for this elected president being kicked out of the country and sent into exile? Aristide squarely blames the United States, saying it was our action. And yes, it was American and French forces that literally put him on the helicopter and took him away. And there is a fair argument to be made that it was serving American interests to get the anti-big business, anti-foreign exploitation president out of Haiti. So was this a big plot? I don't know. It smells like it to me, but I don't know. I'm not even just asking questions. I'm just stating what I understand. This is how he got kicked out in 2004 during the presidency of George W. Bush. So we're going to be talking about these different groups. Okay, so there was a Haiti Democracy Project, which was the primary anti-Aristide group. Now, was this group partly responsible for kicking out Aristide? There's a pretty good case to be made for it. And who is responsible for this group and what kinds of forces are represented by this group? All right, let's go to it. All right, sorry. 2728. All right, great. Go to share my QuickTime.
looked at Aristide and found him inadequate.
Yet some of those who Carney describes as dissatisfied with Aristide's presidency have been more than just bystanders to Haiti's political wars. The Washington-based Haiti Democracy Project, which Carney now chairs, is largely funded by the Boulos family, a Haitian conglomerate that owns several media outlets constantly used to lambaste President Aristide. The Group of 184, another anti-Aristide organization, is also headed by an American, Andy Aped, the president of Alpha Industries, one of the oldest and largest assembly factories in Haiti.
The leader of the opposition, financially supported by the United States, is an American citizen, Andy Aped, who owns sweatshops in Haiti, and he opposed the rise of the minimum wage when President Aristide said the minimum wage has to be raised from 38 cents a day to $1 a day.
But are these interests significant enough to topple the government?
Well, they were significant enough to have a coup in 1991 when President Aristide was first there, and obviously the U.S. military helped. So the answer is yes, I think they are significant enough in the United States government's view. The United States does not want popular democracy in the Western Hemisphere. Popular democracy meaning people who are democratically elected who want to represent the vast majority of people within their country. That's the fight with Chavez. That was the fight with Allende. That was the fight with Michael Manley in Jamaica. And that's the fight with Aristide.
So there's the theory. The theory itself is outlined as well by Aristide, who sees a connection between Bush the father and Bush the son. Bush was the father when the first military coup happened, which has been credibly alleged was actually a group of people who were partially trained by the CIA. So we helped to train the people who kicked Aristide out the first time. So perhaps there's a connection to this next time. We'll see Aristide himself talking about it.
He had only a year left in his term. When René Préval won the elections that followed, Aristide became the first Haitian president ever to peacefully hand over power to another elected leader. After regaining the presidency in the 2000 elections, Aristide was forced out of office for the second time in early 2004. Today, he sees a clear connection between the two coups.
In 2004, a kidnapping happened. They kidnapped me, which is also a coup. And Bush's son is the president. Somehow, something can be linked to find the reason that happened twice. So I think they wanted to continue what they started in 1991 through the first coup.
Hold on a second. Hold on for a second, please. President Aristide resigned. He has left his country. The Constitution of Haiti is working. There is an interim president, as per the Constitution, in place. I have ordered the deployment of Marines as the leading element of an interim international force to help bring order and stability to Haiti.
So these are the accusations. These are the thoughts as to who was behind that happening. Now, this documentary is amazing. It's a really amazing documentary. It goes into more detail about who, that there were many people who were against Aristide, but most of the people who were against Aristide were the people in the country who already had a fair amount of power and influence. Like there's an interview with a famous sociologist who lives in Pétionville with a bunch of chickens. There's a whole explanation of something else that happened that I think is part of what makes this whole situation more fishy. America had already weakened Haiti by encouraging an embargo against Haiti, blocking trade and making trade more difficult, because of the results of an election in 2000. And this is just, there's no way to read this that doesn't seem like it's cooked up. So the Constitution says you have to have an absolute majority if there's not an absolute majority, then you have to have a runoff. So 8 people who ran in the Lavalas party were elected who did not win 51% of the vote, but did win most of the vote, so they didn't have the runoff. So because of that, U.S. blocked foreign aid to Haiti and Aristide. I don't know. Saying that they're trying to protect democracy when they've already supported so many coups and so many anti-Aristide forces, so many anti-democratic forces, it feels to me like the embargo was an intentional move to undercut Haiti back then. Here is what Aristide himself said about this embargo. I'm going to just get forward on here, because he's going to be pretty fiery, as one would imagine. Okay. Share. QuickTime play.
With few financial resources to maintain control of an impoverished nation, President Aristide frequently spoke out against the embargo.
Pour malheureux aller souffle en bas grand goua, débloquer pays. Pour qu'il y ait moins de chômage, plus de travail, débloquer pays. Pour qu'il y ait élection et non coup d'État, débloquer pays.
And the embargo was the beginning, really, of the end of democratic rule in Haiti, because it was designed by the United States, along with support from Canada and France, to destabilize the government.
What you saw as the Bush administration came in was a tightening noose around Haiti, which really, that is to say, almost total embargo and virtually no, not only any assistance going in, but really a fairly sharp embargo that prevented the kind of support coming in that would have assisted Haiti to get back on its feet.
So when we are talking about the failure of the Haitian state and how many presidents and how can things keep on going, if we accept this version of recent history, which as far as I can tell is the most likely course of events, in our lifetime, in our century, the American government was involved in destabilizing and, in his words, kidnapping a democratically elected president of Haiti. When does history start? These are the questions which I keep asking. Now, at the same time, he not only was angering the Americans, he was also angering the French and actually trying to make a point that that France should repay Haiti for what it did. And I think this is amazing. And I think if you've been following this class, I think the idea of reparations is quite fascinating, given how it's not just a question of money, but it's how much the GDP, how much the entire democracy of Haiti was hamstrung by this terrible, terrible debt that France imposed on Haiti. So we'll just watch a little bit of what Aristide was trying to do. He really was a disruptive force in the global stage. And perhaps that is why he was taken out.
First Haitian President Jean-Pierre Boyer to pay France 90 million gold francs in exchange for diplomatic recognition. The debt has been a stranglehold on the Haitian economy ever since. In an attempt to remove this burden, on the bicentennial of Toussaint's death in April of 2003, in a bold and desperate speech, Aristide called upon France to return the money, which his government calculated to equal over $21 billion.
Il nous faut, premièrement, restitution, deuxièmement, réparation. Parce qu'en 1825, sous le gouvernement de Boyer, nous avons dû payer 90 millions de francs or à la France. Aujourd'hui, nous réclamons au moins la valeur capitalisée pour l'année 2003, soit 21 milliards 685 millions 135 571,48 dollars US.
C'est vrai qu'au cours du 19e siècle, la France a négocié très dur les conditions de la reconnaissance diplomatique d'Haïti,
et a imposé à ce gouvernement, ce qu'on ne pourrait évidemment absolument plus faire aujourd'hui, de payer une dette pour les spoliations des colons français. Enfin, ce sont des choses qui seraient inconcevables aujourd'hui et qui ont lourdement pesé sur l'économie d'Haïti pendant tout le 19e siècle. Mais ça appartient à l'histoire, on ne peut pas revenir sur des conditions historiques qui ne seraient plus du tout les mêmes aujourd'hui, pas plus qu'on ne pourra demander aux Espagnols de payer, de faire des réparations pour les crimes commis par les conquistadors. Tout ça n'a pas de sens, l'histoire tourne.
For President Aristide, however, historical injustices cannot be so easily forgotten.
I ask respectfully to France, on behalf of the Haitian government and the Haitian people, to be paid, because this money belongs to the people of Haiti.
To press the issue with France, the Aristide government ran commercials like this one on Haitian national television, connecting an historical injustice with Haiti's current economic crisis.
So it's interesting. You know, I asked my students, should France have to repay Haiti? And they all said yes, except for one. 30 students, only one said no. You know, do we buy this argument? Well, that was history. That was in the past. How much has France gained from this? How much have they earned from it? What do they owe? These are complicated questions, and what I found interesting was the person representing France immediately drew in Spain, because they're trying to say, oh, this is a slippery slope, and then if one person repays, then everyone has to repay. No. Let's just take this one question. How does France repay, not even for the crimes of slavery, how do they just repay for the crime of the debt? They can afford it. France can't afford it. I am going to share with you the other side. So other people in the government would often say that Aristide had dictatorial tendencies, that he ruled by violence, that he used those gangs, and that he was anti-democratic. This was the position of several people in Bush's administration and many people in Haiti. I'm just going to say that because that is what a lot of people believe, that he was behind politically motivated murders. Not much proof, but a lot of belief in that ability, in that fact. I encourage you to watch that great documentary because they do offer equal airtime to people who are trying to say that he was actually a really bad person. But that leaves us in this very kind of sad place. Aristide did return to Haiti after being in exile for 7 years. He did return in 2011, and America did not want him to return. Is he done in Haiti? Will he ever be president again? I don't know. We don't know what's going to happen in Haiti. We don't. But I hope that you found this interesting, this figure, this upsetting figure, this popularly elected multiple times and exiled multiple times president. Was he a hero? Was he a villain? Was America heroic? Was America villainous in its relationship with Aristide? I will leave you to tell me that in the comments. What do you think? All right. Well, coming up next, I don't know what I'm going to do next. I think coming up next, we're going to do the great big American crimes against Haiti in the second half of the 20th century. It's going to be a big one. It's going to be a big one. So I'll see you then. And then I'm going to end it all with a review of the movie I Love You, Anne, the most popular movie in the history of Haiti, and a little bit of levity for everybody. All right. Well, until next time, there's the camera.